Apocalypse. Thirst. Wrong Train. Episode 1. Jack Move. Marcus Chen ran like a man calculating the geometry of survival, boots striking broken concrete in rhythms measured against the crackling chorus rising behind him. Atlanta burned itself hollow at his back, a grid of failing light and choking smoke that hung low enough to coat his tongue with the taste of ash and copper. Each breath scraped. Each footfall was deliberate, tactical, his mind mapping exit vectors through the skeletal remains of military checkpoints and the twisted frames of evacuation transports left to rust where they'd fallen. Riley Oakes held position off his right shoulder without needing to look, their synchronized movement born from years that now felt impossibly distant, almost fictional. Shadows stretched and contracted beneath the dying streetlights. Behind them, the sound grew. That distinctive electric hiss that meant the surge walkers had picked up their bioelectrical signatures, were following the heat and heartbeat trails like predators tuned to frequencies beyond human perception. Not close yet, but closing. Marcus adjusted his rifle without breaking stride, feeling its weight, counting ammunition by muscle memory alone. 2 magazines, 1 partial, 43 rounds total. The numbers ticked behind his eyes with the same steady precision as his pulse. A mantra of diminishing resources in a city that had already consumed everything else. His voice cut through their ragged breathing, flat and economical. Depot's 2 blocks. Restricted siding should be intact. Riley's response came controlled despite the burn building in their chest. If there's anything on those tracks, we're taking it. No second guessing. There had been no room for second-guessing 6 hours earlier, when the last civilian evacuation transport lifted off without them, when Marcus made the call to stay for one final black market run. The antibiotics they'd pulled from that ransacked hospital would have traded high beyond the quarantine perimeter. The math had been clean. Logical. The kind of calculated risk that had kept them alive through worse. Until the zone collapsed, faster than anyone predicted. They vaulted a collapsed barricade, stepping over rebar that jutted from concrete like exposed bone. The depot materialized through the smoke ahead, a skeletal structure of rusted steel and shattered glass, its perimeter fence sagging inward where something massive had forced entry days ago. The rail lines beyond gleamed dully, reflecting distant firelight like metallic veins feeding into darkness. And there, half obscured on a restricted military siding, sat the train. It didn't belong to this ruin. 12 cars of seamless armored steel, matte black surfaces beaded with condensation that caught the ambient light in cold, isolated pinpoints. No identification markings beyond a stenciled number near the engine car, faded but readable. 777. Military. Purpose-built. Something designed to move things that weren't meant to be moved. Marcus registered it in fragments even as they closed the distance. Mobile containment architecture, reinforced coupling, emergency separation points. This wasn't a cargo hauler. This was a vault on rails. Behind them, the crackling swelled into something sharper, snapping arcs that lit the edges of buildings in brief, electric blue flashes. Closer, maybe 90 seconds. Riley's hand came up in a practiced signal, then pointed low toward the train's undercarriage. A maintenance hatch sat recessed into the shadow, its locking mechanism intact, but unguarded. Marcus dropped to one knee beside it, already pulling the bypass tool from his tactical vest. The metal was cold enough to bite through his gloves, temperature differentials registering against his fingertips. 30 seconds. That was the window they had. He worked the panel with the efficiency of someone who'd breached 100 secure systems, fingers mapping circuitry by touch as much as sight. Old design philosophy, but hardened against intrusion. Built to keep things contained as much as to keep people out. A bead of sweat tracked down his temple despite the chill, cutting a clean line through the layer of ash coating his skin. The crackling behind them fractured into distinct sources. Multiple contacts, multiple hunters converging on their position. Riley's voice was tight, but controlled. Marcus. I know. The lock mechanism gave with a metallic click that seemed too loud in the sudden stillness. Marcus wrenched the hatch open. Stale air rolled out, conditioned, sterile, carrying the sharp chemical tang of ozone and industrial disinfectant. Riley dropped through first, rifle leading, disappearing into the maintenance corridor's darkness. Marcus followed, pulling the hatch closed behind them with deliberate force, feeling the seal engage with a pneumatic hiss that cut them off from the collapsing world outside. Darkness swallowed everything. For a moment, there was only the sound of their breathing, harsh, controlled, and the muffled agitation beyond the hull. Scratching, the restless crackle of thwarted electricity. Something denied entry, testing the barrier. Emergency lighting flickered to life overhead, bathing the corridor in dim, pulsing red. Safe. For now. They moved forward in a tactical crouch, boots silent against grated flooring, senses adjusting to the new environment. Confined spaces, limited angles. The corridor terminated at a vertical access shaft, ladder rungs slick with accumulated condensation. Above, a sealed panel was marked with faded stenciling. Car 2, Command. Marcus climbed first, bracing against the ladder's frame and pushing the panel open with controlled pressure. It resisted, then gave with a low, reluctant groan of metal on metal. The command car unfolded around him in utilitarian angles, reinforced steel walls, banks of dark consoles, observation windows reinforced with wire mesh. The air here felt colder, cleaner, processed through filtration systems that hummed faintly in the walls. Emergency backup power keeping essential systems alive. Riley emerged behind him, sweeping the space with their rifle, checking corners and blind spots with automatic precision. Clear, empty, undisturbed. Marcus moved to the primary console, brushing accumulated dust from its surface. Power indicators glowed amber, systems in standby mode, waiting for authorization. Not dead, just dormant. He felt the knot in his chest loosen fractionally. Still live. Backup grids holding. They had shelter. They had systems. They had bought themselves time. The thought barely formed before the train answered. A deep, resonant thud rolled through the car as something heavy locked into place deep within the train's infrastructure. Then another. And another. The sound traveled the length of all 12 cars in sequence, a cascade of sealing mechanisms engaging with mechanical inevitability. Marcus's head snapped up, tracking the overhead lighting as it shifted from emergency red to harsh clinical white. Riley! The floor shuddered beneath them, not from external impact, from motion. A low rumble built from somewhere in the engine car, vibration climbing through the frame, aligning into steady forward momentum. The train was moving, not fast, but accelerating with programmed precision. Riley turned slowly, gaze landing on the reinforced door at the car's far end. Its locking bolts had extended, thick steel rods sliding into recessed housings with brutal finality. Sealed in, moving. Marcus's hands were already at the console, bringing systems online with rapid inputs. Screens flickered to life in sequence, displaying streams of data in cold green text. Route parameters, speed gradients, internal diagnostics, destination coordinates, and a passenger manifest. It filled the central display in stark, unambiguous letters. Train 777, Mobile Containment Unit. 47 Thirst 7 subjects. Status secured. Destination, Deep Disposal Site Gamma. Marcus stared at the words, feeling their weight settle into something far heavier than their clinical phrasing suggested. Not passengers, not evacuees. Containment subjects. Things that needed to be disposed of. Riley moved to the weapon lockers lining the starboard wall, yanking the first open with sharp force. Empty. The second, empty. The third contained a single half-depleted magazine and an emergency flare, its casing scratched and dull from years of storage. Riley's voice carried a new edge, control starting to fray at the margins. This is it. They stripped everything else. Marcus didn't respond immediately. His focus had shifted to the security subsystems, fingers moving faster now, pulling up internal camera feeds from deeper in the train. Grainy images blinked into existence across a bank of monitors mounted above the console. Containment cars, Rows of reinforced cells with observation windows, their interiors lost to shadow. Long corridors of riveted steel and industrial lighting. The footage stuttered, interference crawling across the feeds, then stabilized. Too quiet, too still. Riley stepped closer, drawn by the absence of sound on the screens. Manifest says they're secured. Marcus nodded once, jaw tightening. Says. He cycled through the feeds methodically, bringing each car online. Car 5, empty corridors, sealed doors. Car 6, the same. Car 7. The image flickered harder than the others, interference carving jagged lines through the feed. When it cleared, the corridor came into focus. One of the cell doors stood open, not forced, not torn from its hinges, just open, unsealed. Riley's grip on the rifle tightened until tendons stood out beneath the grime on their hands. Doors don't just fail on containment cells. Marcus enhanced the feed, zooming in on what little detail the degraded system could provide. The darkness inside the open cell seemed to possess depth and texture, a void that absorbed the corridor's emergency lighting without reflecting it. Then the darkness shifted. Not clearly, not fully visible, just a distortion. A reorganization of shadow that resolved into something vaguely humanoid and profoundly wrong. The figure leaned forward into the light, limbs too elongated, joints bending at angles that suggested gravity had lost its hold on proper anatomy. A faint crackle bled through the monitor's speakers. Electric, organic, alive. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. They're not secured. He switched feeds rapidly, pulling up multiple views simultaneously. Car 8, Car 9, Car 10. Movement, not isolated, not contained. Dozens of them. They filled the corridors in jerking, uncoordinated clusters, bodies flickering with intermittent arcs of blue-white electricity that danced across their desiccated skin like living current. Each movement generated that distinctive crackling, individual at first, then building into a layered, restless chorus that grew steadily louder through the speakers. Surge walkers, already loose, already mobile, already moving toward the front of the train, toward them. Riley took an involuntary step back from the monitors, every combat instinct screaming warnings that rational thought struggled to process. How far out are they? Marcus ran the calculations automatically, mapping positions against the train's schematic, measuring distance between cars and estimating their rate of advance. 2 cars back, he said, voice flat despite the adrenaline starting to spike through his system. Maybe less. The implication hung between them, sharp and immediate. No time to think, only to act. Riley pivoted toward the reinforced door leading to Car 3, already moving. We seal it. Now. Marcus abandoned the console, crossing to the manual override panel beside the door in 3 long strides. His fingers flew across the controls, initiating emergency lockdown protocols. The system hesitated, a fractional delay that stretched into subjective eternity. Behind the door, something hit the other side. Not a single impact. A wave. Multiple bodies striking steel, simultaneously. The metal shuddered, sound resonating through the car in rapid, overlapping percussion. Crackling surged, bleeding through the door's seams as thin lines of electric light traced the frame's edges, bright enough to leave afterimages. Riley braced beside him, rifle raised reflexively despite having nothing visible to engage, nothing solid to target. Marcus, I've got it. The panel flashed green, with a grinding roar of hydraulics, secondary locking bolts engaged, thicker than the first set, driving deep into reinforced housings with brutal mechanical force. The door sealed completely, its surface rippling as internal reinforcement systems activated. The next impact hit harder, then another, and another in rapid succession. Electricity crawled across the metal in branching, fractal patterns, bright enough to sting unprotected eyes. The air filled with the acrid smell of ozone and something else, something organic burning at the molecular level. Marcus stepped back, breathing faster now despite years of training. The door held. For now. Riley turned away from it slowly, tension coiling tighter through their shoulders instead of releasing. That buys us time. Minutes, maybe. Marcus was already moving back to the console, mind racing through options. We need to stop the train, or reroute it. There's an override protocol. Riley's attention drifted back to the monitor array, caught by something at the periphery. A rear-facing camera, feed partially degraded by static, showed the corridor of Car 4, the research car. At first, it appeared empty. Then the static shifted, and a figure resolved from the interference. Human. Upright. Still. Not moving with the jerking, predatory gait of the surge walkers. Someone alive. Riley leaned closer, squinting through the distortion as the feed struggled to stabilize. The figure stepped forward into what little light penetrated that section, revealing the outline of a laboratory coat, stained dark in places, hanging loose from a frame that looked diminished by exhaustion. A woman, middle-aged, her face drawn and hollowed by days without proper rest, but her eyes sharp, focused directly into the camera with deliberate precision, as if she knew exactly where it was, exactly who might be watching. In her hands, she held something pale against the darkness. Torn fabric, maybe part of a sheet. She lifted it slowly, deliberately, angling it toward the lens. The letters were uneven, scrawled in something dark that could have been marker or dried blood. But they were clear, legible, urgent. Riley felt their breath catch, the entire world narrowing to that single impossible detail. Marcus's voice cut in from behind, already turning back toward the console. "Riley, what are you—" Riley didn't look away from the screen, didn't blink, as the words burned into their vision with the weight of absolute certainty. Their voice emerged low, stripped down to a whisper that barely seemed their own anymore. "There's someone in Car 4. A pause, heavy with implication. "She's holding a sign." The crackling against the sealed door surged again, louder, closer, as if whatever waited on the other side could sense the shift, the critical moment hanging suspended in the air between discovery and action. Riley swallowed hard, forcing the words out, each one heavier than the last. It says, "Don't use the override." Another impact. Another cascade of electric discharge. Riley's grip on the rifle tightened until pain radiated through their knuckles, eyes still locked on the woman in the grainy feed, on the desperation carved into her posture, on the way she held the message absolutely steady despite the visible tremor running through her hands. Their voice dropped even lower, barely more than exhaled breath. "It's a trap." The words hung in the sterile air of the command car, suspended between them and the woman on the screen, and whatever waited behind the sealed door, as the train continued its programmed journey into darkness, carrying them all toward a destination none of them had chosen.